In this video, we will talk about something that is a tool and a utility at the same time. I'm talking about gradient. The idea behind is to extract the most significant colors from an image and use them as a reference color palette. And this can be very useful, especially during the first steps of color grading, when we are searching for some colors that can be suitable for our image. Very often, in fact, we can see images or movies with color we like, and having the possibility of extracting them as a reference color palette can be a really good source of inspiration for our grade. Let's take a look. The gradient tool is available here, and when I click on the button, the color palette that shows up is just a default palette. This tool has two different algorithms for color extraction. Let me try how the first one will work on this image. As you can see, the colors are pretty close to the image. Let's try number 2. Well, maybe this one is better. Let me go back to number 1. Okay, once I get the best palette I can, I'm gonna choose number 1. In this case, I can click on the table button and the color palette is created inside the image. Now I can save this image, and this can be a good help as a reference if I want to create similar colors in another image, of course. On an image like this, let's try algorithm number 1. Okay, good enough, but it looks to me like we're missing some colors. So let's try option number 2. Okay, this one seems to work better. So now I can click on the table button to insert the color palette inside this image and save this as a reference for future use. As you can see, the two algorithms works differently, so there is no general rule for them. You have to try which one is the best for creating the color palette we need. We should also consider always how the colors are allocated inside the tonal range. I mean, which color is in the shadow, in the midtones, or in highlights. Let's see a few more examples. Let's try option number 1 on an image like this. As you can see here, we are missing some colors. For example, the skin tone, the lipstick color. So I'm going to switch to option number 2. Yes, I think this is a better option. And then I can click table. And now I have my color palette as a reference. Maybe I'm missing the skin tone here in the color palette. On an image like this, let's see how it works. Option number 1. I would say good enough. Let's try option number 2. I'm gonna go with this one. And then I can click again table and create the color palette and save my image. Let's see what happens on an image like this with a very strong contrast. So I'm gonna click on the algorithm number 1. Well, it looks like... let's try the second one. I guess in this case, number 1 does a better job, so I click on the number 1 button and then I click on the table button and create the color palette I need. I think this is pretty much representative of the colors I can see inside my image. Maybe we are still having some color missing, but we must consider also that we have only 6 color patches, so I think this is good enough. Let's see what happens on images like this with very strong colors. So as usual, let's try algorithm number 1. Well, I would say we're missing some colors. Let's try the second. Maybe number 2 is worse, so I'm gonna switch back to number 1. And I'm gonna click on the table button to save the color palette. Again, as you can see, depending on how many colors we have and also how they are allocated in the tonal range, sometimes some colors are missing. Also because we have only 6 color patches. There is, in some cases, it's not enough for mapping all the colors we have inside the image. Or in an image like this, where we have a few colors very well separated. Let's see how it works. Algorithm number 1. I would say not so good, because we are missing still the red here. Let's try number 2. And this time the second one does a better job. So I'm going to click Table and create the color palette. Well, as you have seen, the gradient tool can very quickly sample the colors and create a color palette, sometimes with some limitations. Anyway, I find this tool pretty useful for research purposes. For example, we can create our personal archive of color palettes, sample from images, movie stills, or whatever image you want to sample. And this can be a good source of inspiration when we are studying how color palettes are created, are used inside image, and find which one is the best for our image.